I'm sorry. Okay, let's go ahead and have our first speaker, Brenda Woods.
Hi there. So I'm going to start with Mr. DeQuisto. I know for a fact in the daytime or sometime during the week you sit and you write off debt for people that have either fell on hard times or they spent money irresponsibly. And I also know in your little thing on your the kind of person you are, that you kind of take pride in helping people out of financial hardship with dignity. So I'm kind of wondering, does that only count for the upper class? Is that the middle class? Because it certainly doesn't include the poor people. So I'm just kind of wondering, you know, how you really feel about that, because you're the one that wanted to expedite this ordinance on finding people that are homeless. My daughter is currently homeless because she has mental illness. Ms. Schrader, you and I have had personal conversations about my daughter, and you know why she's out there. The last time homeless people were brave enough to come up here and speak about their situations, and you named off a whole list of housing programs. There are no housing programs. I've been doing this for 2 years. 2 years I've been doing this. My daughter, I've been still trying to get her apartment this week. She doesn't have 3 times the income. She has 2 times, but she doesn't have 3 times the income. She's never been evicted. She's never ruined an apartment, but yet I can't get her a home. She's still on the street with mental illness. We have tons of hotels that are empty that we could use for temporary shelter. I don't know why we can't look at that. I know there's a lot of red tape, but that's something that we could look at opposed to fining them. You are putting the responsibility not only on law enforcement that you're shorthanding because they don't have enough officers out there to deal with this. You are putting the responsibility on the fire department, who has nothing to do with that, and you take their funding, and you're thinking about giving people raises on your board. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Tippin. This is not the time to give your board members or your staff raises when your police department is struggling, when your firefighters are struggling, and when poor people are struggling. So I don't understand, you know, you've had people come up here and share ideas and you've shot them down. You've taken people that came up here with their own time and money to give homeless people showers so maybe they can make an appointment to see a doctor or go on a job interview, and you've shut that down. So I don't know what the deal is. You know, it's very disappointing. We are the taxpayers here. We're not asking for the homeless people to just run amok, but I've been down to Smile Place. It's pretty clean. I've spent the whole last week down there. They don't deserve to be fined. They don't deserve to be kicked around like they're garbage. And our law enforcement and our fire department definitely does not deserve to have this burden put on them when they're already taxed out.
Thank you.
I'm short. Most of my days are spent as an advocate for the homeless or for those living paycheck to paycheck who are just one step above that. One may ask why, and the answer can be spiritualized as wanting to be one of those on the right hand of the Father amongst those who fed and clothed and spoke out for those who could not. Or it could be a moral dilemma to that it is a moral dilemma to let others suffer when I have the power to help. I speak now because of the cruel and unusual punishment which we wish to inflict upon those who have not, those who cannot, because we can. The misuse of power is wrong, and delegating by fear will never pull one up, nor will it encourage others to find their own bootstraps. We must remember that we are all one step, one tragedy, one sickness, one week away from being in their position, and you would not wish to be treated that way. If a city is to be built by the broken, then we must not suppress them, their human rights, or their ability to survive. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Madonna, followed by, I think this is Mavro, followed by Joshua Beck.
Hi, Well, I've lived in Reading for about 30 years, and I love my town, my city. And obviously, I've seen a lot of changes here in Reading, and this homeless issue is very emotional for people. We at the beginning of the meeting, we said the Pledge of Allegiance, and we said we're one nation under God. And I wonder how God would think of punishing and criminalizing someone for being homeless. I worked in a business in downtown Reading for a couple years, and so I'd see the homeless every single day, and I thought, wow, this could be my son, this could be my daughter, and I feel sorry for them. My own situation is such that I am 1 or 2 paychecks away from literally being one of those homeless people. I have a car, it's paid for, it's old, but I would live in that car while I would try to, get my life back together. But would I be, given a ticket for being in my car? Would I, be a criminal for living in my car? Those are things I wondered about. So I think that there's a more humane way to address this issue of homelessness. We have empty churches all week long. People may go on Sunday morning to church, but what about every other night of the week where this could be a safe place for some of our homeless people to be during the night? Anyway, thank you for listening to me, and I know that we will come to a good solution here if we all work together and think about compassion in our heart. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mauro Oliveira, and I live in Eastern Shasta, but I work sometimes 7 days a week in town as assistant radio manager, station manager at KFOI 90.9, and I know Kristen and Carrie and quite a few other people have been on Lynn Fritz's show, Enjoy Magazine, and I have had the opportunity to hear a full spectrum of the kind of people that live here in this community. And the homeless issue is on everybody's mind. And I know that we talked about it the first time we met, Kristen and I, briefly. And I heard you address it in your show. And we have to think outside of the box. Things are getting entirely to a new point on planet Earth all the way around. We're in the 6th grade extinction. We have climate issues in the Arctic that affect wildfires in the North State, and I know you have your hands full. And what I'm saying about thinking outside of the box covers all of this, from fires to homelessness. But we have to work more, and I think this body that you are, which is like the parents, the aunts and uncles of all of the people in your jurisdiction, you have the power to step up and say, we don't know what to do, but we open our doors and would like to start committees with different organizations in the community and find answers. I'm thinking of local lotteries for the homeless to open up more beds, playing on a system that everybody already plays on. I don't know if you have the power to do things like that. I think you do have the power to bring the churches together to talk about what the possibility, what Madonna has just presented. You have a lot of power. And organizations and people in the community have a hard time being heard and getting something started. But by you saying that you want to start it, and these are the days we're going to meet and talk, I think we could bring a lot of people and do something that hasn't been done. We can create whatever we want to create, because what we have right now, all the way across the world, is not quite working. Thank you.
Thank you. Joshua Beck, followed by Sonia Lovejoy, followed by Christian Gardner.
Hello, and thank you for your time. I'm 21 years old, and I don't really know how to address an assembly of this sort. However, I've recently, just as a social experiment, took the time to stay the night at the mission. However, I enjoy the fact that there's people who care. It's clear that there's not enough room there to actually take care of all the people who are on our streets. There's something that needs to be done, and the mission doesn't have enough room or volunteers to take care of it. Sorry, I'm a little thirsty. I had to leave my water outside the room. I'm just here to ask the members of the City Council and everyone else here, just open our hearts to the words of Jesus Christ, who said that in so much as you have done for the poor and the beaten down, you have done for him. I don't know if any of you guys believe in Jesus, but the only way we can truly say that we're a Christian town run by Bethel, Neighborhood Church, all these churches, let's just do what Jesus says. Let's take care of the people. There's a bronze plaque in the Statue of Liberty, and it has a long poem in it, but I'd like to just read the end real quick here. Mother of exiles, from her beacon hand, glows worldwide welcome, her mild eyes command. The air-bridged harbor that twin cities frame, keep ancient lands your story's pomp, cries she, with silent lips, give me your tired and your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempted tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Thank you for your time. That's all I'd like to say.
My name is Sonia Lovejoy. I'm a resident of Reading. I've been a North State resident since 1979. There's a number of things I'd like to kind of just bring to all of our attentions. Right under the consent calendar, it mentions that these items are considered routine. They have been individually scrutinized by the members and are anticipated to require no further deliberation. I would like to suggest that what has already been said here this evening, that you consider further deliberation. My history is such that my home burned on July 26th in the car fire, and I had a son who took his life 2 years ago who was mentally ill. He was 40. He'd been diagnosed at the age of 18. He was homeless a lot. We would put him in places, but mental illness is very complex, and he would periodically make himself homeless. We won't have a discussion here about the shameful lack of funding for mental health in this and all counties and across our nation. And I think what happened here in Shasta County with regard to mental health started when the psychiatric hospital was disbanded. The next item on here is this ordinance is apparently a collaboration, perhaps that's not the right word, of two, somebody mentioned, putting a bunch of numbers and stuff together. So one is about the burning and the other one is about RMC Title 10, Public Peace, Morals, and Welfare. So Chapter 10.40, Unlawful Camping and Fire Activity. I am suggesting, as has already been alluded to, that you separate those two. They are two different things. Of course, I was delighted when I saw tents a lot outside of over here, where we had the farmers market, and I was glad that the homeless could put up tents there. Now, of course, I do not want fires started, so I suggest that you actually consider that they're two different things. Also, I noticed that under recommendations on page 7 that you have an exception, I think it's called an uncodified urgency ordinance, that provides relief from sections of the municipal code for those living in recreational vehicles.
Thank you.
Once again, why can we not understand that there are others who deserve your uncodified
Thank you, ma'am.
designation. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen of the council, thank you for the opportunity to present, and thank you for your service. My name is Christian Gardenier. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. My family was burned out in the car fire. Therefore, I'm now currently living in Reading. So I'm going to cut to the chase here. Whereas being homeless is not a crime, whereas 40% of the homeless population in the U.S. are under the age of 18, whereas close to 200,000 people in families, including children, have experienced homelessness, whereas only 25% of those eligible for federal housing assistance receive help due to lack of funding, whereas the United States the U.S. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has ruled that being homeless is not a crime, whereas Reading does not seem to provide enough adequate public restrooms, shower facilities, or provide non-religious places where homeless can go, whereas some in the Bethel Church, in a religious organization, in flexing political power, and in their apocalyptic vision of thinking about the homeless, that they need to be cleansed from the streets of Reading so Jesus can return, has funded the Reading Police Department division slated to enforce this ordinance, whereas millions of Americans are one paycheck away from the street. Therefore, I hereby advocate that the city of Reading does not entrap people with this ordinance 2598 in a vicious cycle of unending fines and trying to get those fines cleared, but instead works with all people in the community to stop making homeless criminals and to find more housing and social service to deal with this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is David Robbins, followed by Rob McDonald, followed by Chris Solberg.
All right, my name is David Robbins. I wanted to thank you all for letting me speak here. And I enclosed a petition that, I didn't make enough copies, but you guys can take a look at that after the meeting. And I would like to read off the statement that was on the petition. So recently, the City of Reading Council voted to push forward an anti-homeless ordinance which would enable RPD to cite and or arrest people for camping. It would allow them to interrogate homeless people as to why they are not at the Good News Rescue Mission, the city's only shelter. Aside from being a religious organization, is plagued by overcrowding and unsafe conditions, and enacts a 30-day in and out policy. We, the people of Reading, do not agree with the city's criminalization of the homeless and an ordinance that amounts to nothing short of class warfare. We will not turn on our fellow working class citizens who happen to be homeless, because we all know all too well how many of us here in Reading are no more than a paycheck or two away from being in the same boat. When REU charges exorbitant shutoff and reconnection fees on top of already sky-high utility charges, when our city has only one shelter and minimal mental health and rehab services, when our city does so little to combat so many of the issues that make people vulnerable to homelessness in the first place, it becomes up to us to see that the city is held accountable and not the folks it failed to help or support to begin with. These so-called quality of life sweeps, citing people for existing while homeless, are not only a violation of the Eighth Amendment, they're counterintuitive. Not only are most folks unable to pay these citations, but it only serves to push them further into poverty and makes them less likely to seek assistance for the underlying issues that led them to being homeless in the first place. We need to treat the disease before we resort to punishing people for exhibiting symptoms. We need to focus on creating more shelters, more mental health services, more drug and rehab services, instead of criminalizing the people who need them. Some additional points. We know that we have a homeless population of at least 500 on a good day, with numbers of 750 plus. Assuming all these people have access to or not past their 30 days, I would argue that Good News Rescue Mission could not accommodate all of them. When we were surveying South City Park, we found 250 people in that location alone. So how would any citations issued not be violating the law and the Constitution? I also ask you to consider that you're asking severely mentally ill homeless population to look out for their own well-being, to take care of themselves in a way that if they had been able to, many would not be homeless in the first place. And because of the fires, we have additional homeless persons. These are people who are our neighbors, our family. They are from our community. They are not out-of-town foreign transients. They are us. I have a friend who is a real estate agent who has voiced concerns due to homeless people coming into her rental properties, using bathroom, get water. Is it up to her to provide these services? And how is citing people going to help her? Thank you.
Thank you. Rob McDonald, followed by Chris Solberg, followed by Matthew Davidson.
So a few years ago, I came here, stood right here, and said, those are citizens to be served, not vagrants, not whatever you think of them. I'm not sure what it is, but they're citizens. And your government. Government is supposed to serve the citizens. Okay, so let's look at what's happened. You refused to serve the homeless. Refused, okay? So those homeless are all over public property. Well, people want to use public property, but they're afraid of the homeless. So you kicked them off of public property. Well, now the homeless are all over private property because they can't go to public property. That's the taxpayers. That's the citizens, along with the homeless citizens. I'm seeing this go around and around and around year after year after year with no new results. And who have you served? You didn't serve the homeowners and the property owners. You didn't serve the people that want to use public property, all because you refused to serve the homeless. Well, I'm looking at your new proposal. It looks like more of the same, just a little stronger. That is not the solution. And when you start solving problems, instead of moving them around or creating more, we might actually get somewhere.
Next is Chris Solberg, followed by Matthew Davidson, followed by Monique Wallen.
Good evening. My name is Chris Solberg. I'm with the Reading Coalition for the Homeless. You know, I met a couple from Bethel just a couple of days ago before they knew who I was. They were talking about, oh, they're coming down from Oregon, and they're just so excited that Bethel Church is going to kick the homeless out of Reading, and it's going to just be a wonderful place to live. And that God is calling all these people to come and live here and make up for all the people that were burned out. I am shocked that a Christian organization such as Bethel is behind criminalizing the homeless, thinking that they can bring heaven on earth by getting rid of all of these less than desirable people. Now, I know why you put that anti-camping homeless law off, because the National Law Center for Homelessness and Poverty has written each one of you a 5-page letter, and this is my opinion, telling you what they think of your ordinance, B, what they do, and C, what they're capable of doing. Now, the Good News Rescue Mission, I heard an interview on KQMS, and the representative said, oh, we're going to be a low-barrier mission now, and people can come in high and intoxicated and on drugs. Well, you know, that's right on the radio. I think that the homeless that want to change their lives deserve one single place where they can have shelter and be away from the drugs and alcohol. And not, the mission is, the bottom line is this Christian organization called the Mission has to make a decision. Are they going to serve Jesus Christ, or are they going to serve a paycheck and get paid? Well, you know what? They're going to put Jesus Christ in the back room, and they've chose the paycheck. We need another shelter here desperately. And you people aren't acting like Christians that claim you're Christians. And I pray that the Lord Jesus Christ rebuke each and every one of you until you come to the realization that what you're doing is demonic and that people die on the streets and that you're criminalizing them pushes them that much further to death.
Matthew Davison, followed by Monique Quillen.
Hello, I'm Matthew Davison. This is on Ordinance 2598, the unlawful camping aspect of that ordinance. I noticed it's like an omnibus, has several different things in it. That's the main one that I'm addressing. I'm a professional caregiver. I work with the developmentally disabled and who you might call the mentally ill. I'm sorry, this is...
Excuse me. We'll just hold this for a second.
Yes, certainly.
We'll hold your time.
Representative of the mission threatening me. I don't appreciate it and I won't tolerate it.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Mr. Davison. Go ahead.
Okay. Regardless of, you folks do a lot of fine work in a lot of areas of the civic government, and I appreciate that, even though my current remarks would be critical. I work with the developmentally disabled and what you would call the mentally ill. I've broken bread with people at the mission. I have friends some of whom have been homeless or are homeless, and I still consider them friends. I don't have myself enough ability to help them out of their situation on my own, or I would. One of them is a person who is a professional cellist who I have seen perform, and you may even have seen her perform in town and not realize you were watching a member of the homeless community. She's autistic. And so even though she has an amazing skill set and she might even be smarter than me, she needs to be in the system and be helped. But in the meantime, she is at large in the streets. She doesn't have a home and can't afford one right now. She is getting SSI, but that's minuscule for getting a home anywhere. And so a large percentage of the homeless are developmentally disabled or mentally ill, clinically insane in some cases, and some have PTSD. Homelessness affects business, but it is not a business problem, and I want to emphasize this. Homelessness is not a business problem. It is a social problem. The Reading Civic Organization is not a business. You folks are not a business. You may think, we can run the city like a business. It is a social organization here to address the needs of the citizens. A business is not doing wrong by complaining that homelessness causes problems. If they have security, they have the right to have security deal with that problem. But a social organization, it's on yellow. Okay, tick-tock. But a social organization does not have the right to just call security to solve the social problem. That's, in effect, what you are doing by kicking it to the police department. And I admire the people in the police department. All of my dealings with them have been very positive, but this is something that will impact them negatively. I just have to conclude at 6 seconds left to go. This is a social problem that calls for serious social solutions, not punitive ones. You can't punish poverty away.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Monique?
All right. Hello, City Council. Hello again, fellow constituents. Okay, so I sat here and listened, and as I've said before, I was homeless as a child. And basically, I had to do whatever my mother drugged me through. And it is a really difficult life. And a big part of the issue that I feel we face is today we live in a modern society, and we are plagued by mass epidemics. We've got an opioid issue, as you've all seen on the news with what's going on in Butte County. We have a homelessness issue. And I am somebody who believes that at the heart of it, it can start with a conversation. And part of what breaks my heart is the fact that really this is being put on the police department to have to deal with it. I believe it was on one of your posts. I said, why isn't this something that the county is having to deal with? Now, mind you, I've been speaking since September 19th because Brenda got me engaged, and I have been coming in or going to the county boards. We now have a low barrier shelter coming up, okay? It is in progress. We now have 102 jail beds that have now been added to the jail to help with some of the issues we face. I think it is truly important. I go out and I try not to give a handout because I ain't got much myself, but I always try to inspire hope. And you know what? I am a Lincoln lover, and there's a sign on Alta Mesa, and every time I drive by it, it makes me giggle, because inside, you know what? This house divided cannot stand. And it is civility, Mr. Solberg, civility that is going to help us. We all know there's an issue, there's a problem. We're all trying to do all of our parts to help with it. What I need from you guys is to please help us, because it started when I came in here asking for help for Brenda's daughter. Okay? Mental health, I've been speaking at every single board, and I'm always talking about a better mental health. Listen, guys, we all have a mental health. It's how you wield it. Okay? So now I feel like I've gone cuckoo again, and I'm going to want to run, but the point is, please hear me. It's about conversations, and I don't think that it's fair to the police department that it is put on their shoulders because, as Chief Moore said before, it is a heavy burden and it's overwhelming. I mean, think about it. We're overwhelmed by this situation. There's a lady out there who got a divorce and then was so overwhelmed, couldn't handle it, and now lives in a car because she can't deal with things because life is difficult. Look where we're at. Everybody's arguing over the same things. We need to get together and find a solution that is for real, because I don't want to lose my civility. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that concludes the public comment on consent calendar. So I'm going to bring this back to the council for any questions or comments or a motion to accept.
I'll make a motion to accept the consent calendar.
And do I have a second?
Whoops, I'll second.
All right, and does your motion include that typo correction on item 411C?
Yes, it does.
Thank you. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? But I just want to make a comment in conclusion. I want to thank all of you who came and spoke on this issue. Our heartstrings are pulled too. We see the homelessness out there, and I want to thank you for all of your concern. I would encourage each of you who came here to speak tonight to go speak at the county. Much of the funding and the resources for homelessness is at the county level, and the mobile mental health crisis unit was just mobilized within the last week or so, so that's going to help address some of the mental health issues that many of you alluded, and we know that that is an issue for many of the homeless. There are other issues as well. There's a huge movement within the county. They did receive some funding for a shelter and navigation center, or the place, whatever they're calling, that will provide shelter and a connection to services. So there are things that are moving forward in the community on this issue, and so we are very well aware of it. It's just important that we stick to our role, our piece of that. So I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to the next item.